Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome to the absolute hammer of the TCEC Season 26 Premier Division that you can follow now on the official and beautiful TCEC website. We have here now the two most powerful chess engines in the world, Stockfish and Leela0 battling it out in a crazy Queen's Gambit decline, and this game I think is the perfect example of the counter-attack in chess. So there is a certain rule in chess that says when you get attacked you should search for a possibility of a counter-attack, and this game had so many different counterattacks. Really the changes of the attack were really present here all over the board. So in my opinion, simply the most epic game from this event so far. So let's dive now into this game with the white pieces. The fish opened with the move d4, Leela's response was d5. We have now the move c4, the Queen's Gambit, e6, the Queen's Gambit decline, knight to c3, knight to f6, and now after bishop to g5 we're now in the modern variations of the Queen's Gambit decline. Bishop to e7, e3, pretty standard stuff, calcing, knight to f3, normal development. We have now the move a6. The idea about this move a6 is that if, for instance, bishop to d3 happens, then black could play something like d takes c4, then decoy the bishop to the square c4, and then hit the flanks with the move b5, maybe afterwards also with the move c5. So here after move a6, Stockfish, that's why delays the move with the bishop, plays now queen to c2. We have now the move h6, and now the real fun starts. So here we're still in the pre-arranged line, so the engines didn't calculate the position for themselves already. Still we're in the pre-arranged opening. Here the pre-arranged move by the organizer was a very interesting idea, the move h4, and although Leela0 was also was forced to play now the move knight to c6, I still wanted to show you what would have happened if, for instance, h takes g5 happens. So I think we should learn theory, because this position actually with move h4 has been played in one game that I see in the database. It was a winning game by white. Actually, you cannot take, as I said, h takes g5, because after h takes g5 you cannot move the knight, of course, somewhere, because you get checkmated in one. So you would be pretty much forced to play the move g6, but now we pick up the knight, bishop to f6, and now after bishop to d3 I think things are getting very, very unpleasant for black, especially the position could crack somehow here around the square g6. Maybe something like king to g7 can solve the position, but look at this, g4, queenside castling, g5 in some lines occupying the g file is an opportunity for white. I think black will not have fun in this game for sure. So that's why after move h6, good moves are knight from b to d7 and c5. But now still the prearranged move by the organizer was now the move knight to c6, and from this point on the engines are calculating the position for themselves. Knight to c6 is maybe not the optimal move, of course, for black, but it has a certain idea to maybe launch a central attack here with move e5 to somehow break and enter here in the center of the board. The fish continues here with bishop takes f6. Says here, I want to get rid of the key defender of the king, because the knight on f6, as we mentioned, is controlling the h7 square. After bishop to f6, Stockfish goes for the attack with move g4, and now e5. A beautiful central counter attack here by Leela0, breaking and entering here in the center of the board. Leela is saying here, you stayed a little bit too long with your king in the center. Now I will try to open the center, especially here on the e file. So the fish continues now with the counter attack, g5. Really great move, attacking the bishop. And then again, Leela0 is not reacting, plays also a counter attack for itself. So knight to b4 hits the queen to a4, again attacking the knight, and now bishop to e7, protecting simply the knight on b4. Here e takes d4 would not be good actually for black. Seems tempting, but after something like g takes f6 and d takes c3, of course the knight is hanged, so that's the issue. So the bishop has to retreat now to e7. Here Stockfish continues with knight to e5, and now Leela0 showed its mean plan, plays now bishop to f5, is hitting simply the c2 weakness. Now Stockfish has now several choices. You could of course play something like rook to c1, but then you lost maybe the privilege of castle on queenside. So Stockfish is saying here, who cares? You can get my rook, but here you're getting exposed already on the king side. I have a very powerful attack already on this side of the board, so that's why Stockfish first of all continues with bishop to h3. We have bishop to h7. Leela0 is trying, of course, to keep the light square bishop on the board, is still battling for the c2 square. Stockfish continues now with g takes h6, and now allows here even Leela0 to play this fork against the king and the rook. But Stockfish is a different beast. Stockfish is, of course, the big biggest calculator in the chess community. Stockfish says, who cares about the rook? My attack here on the king side is simply too powerful. Stockfish plays now here king to f1. And again, what should black do? Let's see now the obvious continuation, which was not played in the game, knight to a1. If you play that, actually, here comes the mean plan by the fish. If knight to a1 would have been played here by Leela, then look at this, h takes g7, you move maybe the rook somewhere to e8, and now there is this resource. Look at this crazy line. I'm not sure how many humans would even consider this type of a line. Look at this, after queen to d1 and bishop to f6, actually the almost winning move, I would say here, is a stunning bishop to f5. Really wild stuff. Look how the game would have been continued if, for instance, Leela0 would have taken the knight on a1. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you really this spectacular line. After bishop to f5, bishop takes f5. Now you play queen to h5, and there is now a huge problem. For instance, if you try here to play something like bishop to g6, then you get checkmated in 1 here on h8. If you play, of course, something like bishop to h7 to stop somehow this checkmate on h8, then you get queen to f7, also checkmate. So that's why here after queen to h5, you would be pretty much forced to play now the move bishop to g7, but now queen takes f7 first, a new check, now again a new check, now we pick up the bishop on f5, and you would have to, I think, give up here the rook for the knight, because the knight is simply too powerful here, threatens the fork, threatens the check. There is also the potential progress of the pawn on the h file. So I think here in this line, and that's also the move that the Stockfish engine at home here suggests, that you should give up simply the rook for a knight, but then after d takes e5, you could maybe take out the pawn, queen to h5. Look at this, the game continues, rook to g1, you're delivering a check, and still the fish, my Stockfish engine at home, says white is much better here. Look at this, after something like queen to h7, you can even trade it off, and rook to a1. Look at this, we have now 4 pawns here on the king side. It will be, I think, game over here for black. So that's why after king to f1 that we saw, Leela0 didn't take out now the rook on a1 immediately. Leela0 first played bishop to h4, gets rid of this pawn on the h file, and now Stockfish continues with knight to d5. Has now 2 most powerful knights in the center of the board, supported by the pawns. Really a beautiful dynamic position. And Leela0 again plays on a certain counterattack, b5, simply wants to get the queen far away from the action, because if the queen somehow, as we mentioned, gets on the g file, gets maybe somehow on the h file, we saw that then black doesn't have so many good defensive chances. Queen to h5, queen to a5 here by Stockfish seems so that now the queen is far away from the action, and now Leela0 says, I can take now finally the rook on a1. But again, Stockfish has everything under control. Stockfish plays now h takes g7, king takes g7, queen to d2. Again, Stockfish is trying to get the queen into the game. What should you do? If you, for instance, try knight to c2, maybe to get the knight back into the game, then rook to g1, king to h8, and now after move e4, this is not a good position anymore for black. You cannot even, of course, somehow lock the g file, because then f4 would happen. If you take, then of course you expose your king here on the h file. So again, the Stockfish engine says white should be winning here. So after move queen to d2, that's why Leela0 tried bishop to g5, locking out simply the open g file. Stockfish continues now with rook to g1. We have now the move f6, and again a beautiful move here by the fish, knight to f4. Again a beautiful counterattack, not allowing, of course, first of all, this knight to be taken, because here there is this activity of the rook against the king, and there is also now a new threat, knight to e6, the fork against the king, queen also against the rook. So powerful move here by Stockfish 16. So we have now queen to e7 by Leela, and now queen to d1. Again, Stockfish wants now to include the queen into the game somewhere here, maybe on g4, h5. Stockfish is saying, who cares about your knight? The knight is simply far away from the action. Also, we can say this rook has not participated so far in the game. So when we evaluate really the strength of the pieces, we can say that it's almost like Leela0 is playing without the rook and also without the knight. So although Stockfish lost some material, but there's simply too much pressure that's going on now here on the king side. Crazy position. So here we have, after queen to d1 by Stockfish, f takes e5. Now rook takes g5. You cannot again take queen takes g5, because knight to e6 would be then the fork against the king and the queen. So that's why king to h8, Stockfish takes, rook takes e5, queen to g7, and now bishop to g2, hitting the rook. At least Stockfish is again not allowing here Leela0 to develop the pieces. We have now rook takes f4 by Leela0. Leela doesn't want to tolerate this annoying knight here. E takes f4, and now rook to g8 by Leela0 tries, of course, here somehow to get maybe even some checks here on g2, also some attacking chances further on the g file. Rook to g5, good move by the fish. We have queen to f7, and now bishop to d5. We have now queen takes f4, bishop takes g8, pretty forced line here by both of these engines. Queen to g5, bishop takes h7, king to h7, sorry, I moved that a little bit too fast, sorry. So here after queen to f4, as we said, bishop takes g8, queen to g5, Stockfish takes out now also the bishop on h7. We have now king to h7, and now Stockfish grabs finally this knight on a1. From this point on, we have reached now the fully endgame stage, in which Stockfish has now 2 extra pawns, but actually now suddenly Leela0 has a better activity with the queen plays. Now, of course, queen to d2 wants to finally grab some pawns. Stockfish continues now with queen to b1 check. We have king to g7, and now queen to e4, at least protecting now the pawn on d4. Leela0 takes out now this one, but of course Stockfish gets now the king into security and has now a very solid position of the king. We have now b takes c4. Leela0 get challenged in this way. Stockfish delivers a check, a new check, and takes out now finally the pawn on c4, and has now a good control of the pawn on d4, and also a good control of the pawn on a2. So in this tactical sequence by the queens, Stockfish is still up a pawn and has now this very unpleasant passer on the f-file. So if the queens are now off the board, if somehow Stockfish manages to trade off the queens, this should be game over here for Leela0. We have now the move a5, king to f3, good move by the Stockfish, and that's exactly how you play queen and pawn chess endgames. You should get your king towards the center, although your king gets a little bit exposed, and you could get checked a little bit by your opponent's queen. It's not a problem, because in order to deliver checkmate, black would have to include further pieces into the game. So black has to also include somehow its own king into the game, but it's not working because of course white is also delivering some checks. So that's, I think, a very common rule in queen and pawn chess, and especially I think in any end game, that the king should be centralized, because it's evaluated as an active piece, not something that you should protect. So that's why after king to f3, we have queen to a1. Here Stockfish delivers a new check, king drops back to h4, and now queen to d8. We have now a new check, and now Stockfish tries a different check with queen to e8, king to h6, queen to e3, king to g6, and now a3. Again, keeping everything glued together, everything compact. Stockfish doesn't want to lose now any pawns anymore. So after a3, we have queen to h1, a new check. Here Leela0 tries, of course, to deliver checks from the other side. Stockfish continues now with queen to d3, and again new check, king to h6, and now here king to d2. Now no good checks are possible, of course, by black, so that's why queen to d5, king to d3. Here Leela0 delivers a new check, and again Stockfish is slowly but surely trying to get the king, of course, towards the center, and now I think mission accomplished. You see, Stockfish gets now the king on a very active square. This pawn is protected, and again Leela0 doesn't have good checks. If you play, of course, as we mentioned, queen to f7, then the queens are off the board, and then it's game over with an extra pawn, of course, here by white. So that's why queen to b2, new check by the fish. We have queen to d7, and now a new check, and now a new check by the queen, and now again a nice centralizing move. Again, the king gets a better activity. So we have now here new check by Leela. Stockfish covers, of course, on the 5th rank, and now queen to b8. But even if you try, I don't know, something like queen to b2, it doesn't matter. Again, we can deliver a new check. Look at this. We could, of course, get the queen here, and now after something like a4, there's always the possibilities to somehow, again, to deliver check, maybe take out this pawn. If this pawn is taking, then this obviously is marching. You try maybe, I don't know, queen to a3, then we get a new check. Look at this, the king is getting closer. So it's, in my opinion, not a good position anymore for black. So look at this, after queen to d5, that's why Leela0 tried this one, tries of course to get the queen here to deliver new checks, but Stockfish continues in a calm way. Queen to c6, king to f7, and now queen to e6, queen to e7, king to g6, queen to f6, and now d5. So you see, Stockfish is getting closer and closer. The king is very well placed. The queen is very active. Leela0's queen is simply now far away from the action. Queen to e8, obviously trying again new check, but again Stockfish covers. We have queen to h8, and now again the king gets closer. Really crazy position. Queen to f8, Stockfish gets again on the edge of the board, is getting the king more and more active. Really epic endgame technique. Is even trying, I don't know, maybe to play queen to g6, and after something like king to h8, queen to f6, then trades off the queens. And again, we mentioned when the queens are off the board, then the game's over here for black. So that's why queen to g7, king to h5, great move. No good checks are possible now anymore by Leela0. So that's why Leela0 moved now. The pawn. Stockfish delivers a new check, now pushes the pawn to f4. We have now queen to g3 by Leela0, but now Stockfish finds a good solution, of course, plays now this idea, as we mentioned, and this is game over. Queen takes g6, white is completely winning here. So king takes g6, king to h8, king to f7. Now Stockfish pushes the pawn further. We have now the move f6, king to f4, f7, king to e4, promotion of the queen. The queen gets here. Stockfish gets, of course, the queen closer. And here, after move queen to c1, c6, and d takes c6. In this particular position, Leela0 resigns. So epic game, epic tactical sequence we have seen here in the opening stage. Then it led into wild queen and pawn chess endgame. Crazy game for sure. With this win, actually Stockfish took now serious lead, because Stockfish is now 2 points, has now 2 points more than Leela0, has also played one game more than Leela0. But even in the optimal scenario for Leela, if Leela0 wins the game, then Leela0 would be still a whole point behind Stockfish in this TCEC season 26. So obviously the fish is still the better engine and has now fully control of the Premier Division. Of course, we will see Leela0 and Stockfish in the super final of the new TCEC season, but I think again the fish is the favorite to again win a new TCEC title. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the Queen's Gambit decline. If you want to see some other epic sharp tactical games like this, check out our Come to Chess Games Play by Computer series. Here's the link of our playlist, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.